We were camping deep in the forest, far from the nearest town. It was supposed to be a weekend of fun, hiking, roasting marshmallows, sharing stories around the fire. The first night, I noticed a strange marking on a tree near our tents, a series of slashes that looked deliberate, like a warning. I pointed it out, but my friends shrugged it off as an animal's doing. The next day, we found more marks, forming a rough circle around our campsite. Unease settled in, but we laughed it off. That night, as we sat around the fire, we heard soft rustling in the distance, then footsteps, steady and deliberate. I shined my flashlight toward the sound, and that's when I saw it. A face, pale and ghostly, peering from behind a tree. Its eyes were wide, unblinking. "Who's there?" I shouted. The face didn't move. Suddenly, it vanished into the darkness, and whispers began, like a chant coming from all directions. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, almost like they were closing in on us. Panic set in, and we grabbed our stuff, fleeing the sight. As we stumbled back to the car in the dark, we kept hearing the footsteps, always just behind us. When we reached the car and sped off, none of us dared to look back. The next morning, a park ranger told us, "People go missing in those woods." We never went back to find out why. On the last night of our camping trip, we stumbled upon an old, weather-beaten cabin hidden among the trees. It looked abandoned, almost swallowed by the forest. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to check it out. The door creaked open to reveal a single room with dust-covered furniture and a thick, musty smell that hung heavy in the air. Inside, strange symbols were carved into the walls, jagged, deep, like something desperate had made them. As we explored, a low, guttural growl echoed from a dark corner of the room. I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang, plunging us into darkness. We rushed to open it, but the door wouldn't budge, as if something on the other side was holding it closed. The growl came again, closer this time. I turned and a cold breath brushed against my ear. A voice, raspy and strained, whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Panic surged through us. We banged on the door, throwing our weight against it until it finally gave way. We stumbled out into the night and sprinted back to our camp. The next morning, we retraced our steps to prove to ourselves it was just our imagination. But the cabin was gone, like it had never been there. We left that day and never spoke of it again. Our camp counselor was a master storyteller, and every night he'd tell ghost stories to scare us before bed. But there was one story that was different, one he told with a serious face, the story of the last camper. According to him, a kid had gone missing in these woods years ago and was never found. Some nights, he said, you could still hear him calling for help, wandering the woods. On the last night of camp, we were sitting around the dying campfire when we heard it. A faint voice drifting through the trees saying, "Help me." We thought it was one of the other kids playing a prank, but the voice came again, closer, more desperate. "Help me, please." We decided to follow it, just to prove it was nothing. As we got deeper into the woods, the voice grew louder. Suddenly we saw him, a young boy standing in a small clearing, waving us over. His clothes were torn and dirty, like he'd been lost for years. "Are you okay?" I called out. He didn't answer. He just smiled and said, "I'm the last camper." His eyes were dark, hollow. We froze, fear gripping us. Then he took a step back and vanished, like he'd never been there. We ran back to camp as fast as we could, not daring to look behind us. That night, none of us slept. We left camp early the next morning, and to this day, none of us ever went back. They say the boy is still out there, waiting for someone to follow his voice again. Hello there. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to check out other true stories. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell to stay up to date. Thanks again, Mr. Chills.